Welcome back to Heavy Muscle Radio. I'm Dave Palumbo, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris the Technician Aceto, and special guest, Aaron Singerman. Welcome, guys. We just got done with the 2017 Olympia weekend, and it went off without a hitch, and it was a tremendously fun experience. Glad I got to hang out with both of you live, and we have a lot to report. Phil Heath winning number 7, tying Arnold Schwarzenegger, still one Olympia away from tying Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman for the all-time record. That will be next year. And Chris, let me go to you first. What was your take home from the weekend? Like when you left and you're sitting on the plane reflecting about the weekend, what were you kind of thinking about most?
I put the show behind me about 30 seconds after it's over. So I have not. I have not thought about it at all, but I guess if you asked me, to try to think about it, it was the reestablishment of Phil Heath in terms of how impressive he is, because he keeps batting these guys off. He bats Kai away, he bat Roden away, he's bat Ramy away. That's not to say he's perfect or, that he's a Coleman or a Dorian, but, he's got a physique that keeps him on top. And if he came in last year, if he's come in any of these shows, essentially a little bit off, he's in trouble. And he doesn't. Aaron? That's the takeaway, that's the takeaway impressive thought of the weekend for me.
Aaron, I want to ask you a question because there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks, as I like to call them, who are home and they're watching the show on their iPhones and maybe their computers if they have computers. I think everyone uses phones now. And they're immediately judging the show from their phones, and they're like, this is wrong with this guy, and Phil Heath's got a big gut, and Ramy should have won, and you were sitting there, in the front, area with us, with the best viewing seats, watching the action live. Who did you think deserved to win?
So yeah, you're definitely right, Dave. A lot of the focus on the internet, the buzz from the boards and Instagram and YouTube right now is very specifically focused on Phil Heath's gut. That's the big topic of discussion. That's the number one thing that's talked about. I think that when you're there, and you're in the press pit or you're up close. I was fortunate enough to be 2 rows back for the majority of the men, and dead center 2 rows back. And I can tell you that from where I sat, it did not seem like a close contest to me. I didn't think, I was not like, oh, he may not win, or maybe the gut was too much. Yes, he did have a big issue with his midsection, but it wasn't so overpowering from where I was sitting anyway, that I even thought for a second maybe it was going to go a different direction.
Yeah, to me,
Dave, let me comment about the guy.
Yeah.
I don't like Phil Heath. I say that as in a convenient way to set up my statement. The gut. It's an illusion, dude. It's like taking pictures of a model taken, you can take 100,000 photos. Everyone's taken 1 million photos. And during a 1-hour prejudging, if you took 100 photos, 200 photos of Phil's face, you'd find some part where he looked, not confident. You would find pictures where if you took 300 photos of Ramy's face, you'd find stills where he looks not confident. Yes, you'll find pictures where Phil's, gut is hanging out. I didn't see it once in a quarter turn where he was compared. Not once did I say, like, in a quarter turn, oh, wow, quarter turn to the right, he's got a gut. And they have these angled back double bicep where his, stomach hangs out, or he's huffing and puffing. To pretend that all of a sudden his gut was hanging down to his toes is just fraudulent. Yeah. Because I'd be the first one to say it, because it's in my interest to see him lose to Ramy and everyone else, to give everyone else a chance.
Yeah.
So, it's like the narrowness. I've tried to critique him on narrowness. I've really only seen him narrow probably 40 minutes in one prejudging in 2015, and at the night show he appeared a little bit narrow, even though he's more detailed and maybe in certain poses. So it's a non-issue as far as I'm concerned, because I would personally like to make it an issue so I could sit here and say, you know what? Let me tell you, on the front double bicep and on the side chest and on the side tricep, none of those poses did I see it as an issue. Yeah. People are taking pictures at an angle, photographers, let's talk about the real issue, which is his level of conditioning, his level of fullness, his level of roundness, his level of professionalism, his posing routine. The gut is like this made up story so that people can say he should have lost.
Right. Yeah, well, of course. Let me just make a statement, though, too, because he did have an umbilical hernia, okay, and he's had it for the last couple of years, and it seems to have gotten worse. He'll probably need to get it fixed. A lot of guys have had it. Kai Green's got it fixed, Dennis Wolf. A lot of top bodybuilders have had that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about distension issues, and you know what the truth is? Every top guy's got it, and like you said, and I'll use myself as an example. I used to do these routines when I would compete, where I would do crazy kooky stuff, like I would strut like John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever. I would, pretend I was the Incredible Hulk, and if you caught me in one of my actions, you could certainly see my stomach hanging out in a very bad, light. And those are always the pictures that when people don't like me, they put up online. But, what about the pictures, the other 999 pictures where, I looked good and freaky and big. So Phil Heath is a victim of the fact that people will take, like you said, unflattering pictures and put them up and say, this is what he looked like. I got news for you. I was sitting in that front press area. I know Aaron was sitting there. I know Chris was there. And so were all the judges live. And that's the best place you could be sitting, because that's the only place you will get a true image of what's going on. Johnny just explained to me before, even up on those big screens that they project in the Orleans Arena, it will distort the pictures and will distort the image of the person. So the only true people who really saw what was going on are the judges. So you can analyze all the pictures on your iPhone you want, and you can make all the assessments you want, but you know what? It's irresponsible to judge a show from your freaking living room. And people think I have a problem with Louis Marco. I don't have any problems with Louis Marco. I think what he does for the industry is great with his YouTube channel. A lot of people that like his reporting. He's always on top of stories. I got to give him credit for that. He's on top of things. But you know what? He's a guy who judges things from his basement, computer screen. And unfortunately, that doesn't make him a valid, I guess you could say, commentator on the show. He can give his opinions and he can venture and field all the idiots online who say Phil has a gut and shouldn't have won and Ramy should have won. But you know what? He wasn't there in that front row, okay? And neither were any of these other idiots online who were putting down Phil. I'm not a Phil Heath physique fan. I'm like Chris. I would rather see Ramy win, because I'm a big mass monster guy and I think Ramy's awesome. But he didn't deserve it. There's some pictures we can put up. You can see the back double bicep. You'll see that Ramy has a lack of conditioning. He's too heavy, and that means too fat. You can suck all the water out of someone, but if they still have some fat, you see a smooth glaze over their body. Phil was nasty hard. Unfortunately for Phil, his worst pose is his standing relaxed. And that's where people will get that. But look at the side chest. If you look at his back double bicep, Phil crushed this lineup. And it was unanimous, and the judges saw it that way. And you know what? It's disrespectful to the judges who spent their entire life judging these shows. They're at the highest level. These are the Olympia judges. For you on your couch at 18 years old to say, I know more than they do. And so, you know what? When Louis Marco reads these people's comments and puts it out there as if, the popular opinion was that Phil shouldn't have won. It doesn't matter. The popular people don't vote. This is not a social media contest. It's a bodybuilding event that's judged live. Dave, and I think that's where people are going.
We got so much to talk about. But I think Ramy, is the fans' choice for a lot of reasons. And if you went to the night show last year, by the level of excitement that Ramy generated, he's always going to be the fans' choice.
Yeah. Let's Ramy seemed very confident.
So the disconnect, Dave, is are you judging a bodybuilding contest, or are you judging the guy who we all, are expecting to dominate the sport, sooner than later, and somebody who actually has a tremendous personality and is tremendously likable and has just what appears to be a dominant body. But when you put those lights up and you put people in posing suits and you try to cut the fine line between, who's first, who's second, who's third, you asked me at the beginning of the show, what is the takeaway message of the weekend? The takeaway thought for me is Phil keeps putting these guys away. And there's a reason why he keeps putting these guys away. He has perfect fullness for his body. He has cartoonish fullness. And a lot of times when you get cartoonish fullness, we've seen people with cartoon-like muscles, they lack the detail. He's got cartoon-like muscles with detail. He's got sinewy muscle. And he's got bells and whistles that a lot of people don't have, like in the back double, the glutes and hams. A lot of guys have great glutes and hams. Phil's upped his glute and ham game the last 2 years. Holy shit. You know what I mean? I mean, people have good glutes and hams on that stage. And Phil brings like the next level glutes and hams. So, he brings all these extra little things that make it hard to get by, or make it hard for him to lose.
I think we're seeing a lot of, it's very similar or reminiscent to the Kai Green. Kai Green is a much more popular champion than Phil Heath, and he has been.
Good point. It's a good point.
Everybody was saying, Kai Green won, Kai Green should have won. And I worked with Kai Green as my business partner, and I didn't think he should have won. You know what I mean? But I was looking at it objectively from a bodybuilding critique standpoint as an observer versus as my own interest. Of course, I want Kai Green to win. I mean, look, there we are on the wall right there. I mean, of course I want him to win, but he didn't win. And the same thing happened this time. I would have loved to see Big Ramy win. That would have been huge. William Bonac, Neil Hill is my close friend. Neil lives down the road here, and I would have loved to see Neil Hill's guy win. William Bonac is one hell of a great guy, but it just comes down to, unfortunately, when you're in the first few rows, you can either be honest with yourself or you can say, my coaches are telling me that I'd rather Big Ramy win, and that's what happens a lot on the internet. A lot of people rather have Big Ramy win for whatever their personal reasons are, and sometimes it can cloud the perspective. Obviously, everybody here, myself included, would have loved to have seen change. I mean, change is exciting.
Absolutely.
So. Well, Aaron, you got to keep in you got to keep in mind. I mean, I guess we'll get to that, but if you're Kai Green and you're getting second in the Olympia, and you're Big Ramy and you're getting second in the Olympia, and everyone in your circle is telling you should have won, that's extremely problematic. Because you need someone to tell you. I mean, I tell people who, who sometimes I'm helping, they place higher than they should have. Dude, you got a gift. You got a gift this time. I didn't have you there. Well, everyone's telling me, okay, good. Everyone's telling you.
Chris,
but, if you get complacent on that, or if that's your circle that's affirming, Kai or Ramy that you decimated the show, then that's dangerous. Because you have to understand where your weaknesses lie so that you can improve on them.
Chris, let's talk about Ramy. Let's talk about Ramy. I want to cut to a clip from the press conference where Ramy, for the first time we've seen since he's been at the Olympia, shows some degree of, being very confident in what's going on mentally. Play this clip, Johnny. It's interesting, the clip, because I've never seen Ramy exert himself and say, hey, I'm ready, I'm here to win. I'm not here to just be a nice guy anymore. I want this title. And, we all question whether Ramy had that killer instinct. And it appears, from the clip, and I kind of, the take-home message, I felt Ramy was ready, by what he was saying here at the press conference. We'll see. Let's play this thing.
Return.
Here it goes.
That's part of this. Hello. I'm really happy to be with my friends, and with all the respect for my friends, I'm coming only for first. I'm coming every year to win, but this year I promise. I bring something new, fancy, in Olympia. You know.
And that was Ramy saying that I'm here to win, and that's it, and I'm not here to do anything else. I'm not playing around anymore. So I felt he was very mentally strong there. Chris, would you agree? He seemed pretty mentally strong at that point?
I mean, he's talking with conviction without any pause. I mean, those are characteristics of somebody who believes in himself.
Aaron, would you agree when you saw that in the press conference that Ramy seemed ready?
Yeah, I thought so, and I think that he firmly believed that he was going to win for sure. I mean, I think that he came there with the intentions, and I think based on the attitude of a lot of those guys, like Chris was saying, I think they felt extremely confident. Confident.
I was almost ready to believe that Bader may have hired Anthony Robbins to come and have a few sessions with Ramy, because he really turned them around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Then, after the show was over, Bader, I know, Chris, that you and Bader have this, this feud kind of going on because of the whole Ramy thing and some of the athletes that you work with and he works with. I don't really have a problem with Bader, other than the fact that, I like to break his balls a lot, and I don't think he minds that I break his balls. But Bader kind of crashed our. We brought him into the wrap up we were doing Saturday night after the show. Aaron, myself, Milos, you, and Chad Nichols were doing a wrap up. We bring Bader in, and then Bader actually crashed the wrap up as well, and put the two silver medals, Ramy's and Ashkenani's, around my neck to be funny. But in that, let's play the clip first. I want to play the clip, and then I want to talk about it afterwards. Going to step in here for a second. Obviously, the current guru of Big Ramy. Talk to me. Were you happy with the way Ramy looked tonight?
Yeah. At least 90%.
90%. What is Ramy? What do you guys have to do with Ramy to get him at 100% at this point? Is it? What's the difficulty?
I think mentality a little bit. He's don't have the mentality still to win. Because the history.
He seems to have more confidence on stage now, but it seems like we're not seeing enough detail in his physique.
No, he's confident as his preparation, but the problem is the history of him, and Mr. Olympia especially.
Do you think he gets nervous when he gets up there?
Yes.
What will be the next step with Ramy, strategy-wise, contest-wise?
Maybe Arnold, Ohio, but mainly is Mr. Olympia.
That's Bader now kind of disputing what we just said, not addressing the physique, the fact that his physique wasn't in the best shape of his life. He's saying that he doesn't have the mentality to win Mr. Olympia. Chris, let me go to you first. How do you interpret that?
An excuse. I just, sometimes if you need to interpret things, you would have to switch things around, because I got a lot of flack when I prepped Ramy last year, of course, and I didn't come out and say I don't think Ramy is mentally ready to be Mr. Olympia, or mentally ready to be in the Olympia, or mentally ready to beat these guys. There was no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind that the person I believe is the person at the press conference putting his fist on the table and saying, God willing, I'll be Mr. Olympia, and I will be Mr. Olympia now, and I'm going to bring you something that you've never seen before. So there's a disconnect, because what we saw in prejudging, was, a darn good Ramy, but let's be honest. Ramy was 4th last year. Dexter was way smaller this year. My guy, Sean Roden, was off totally in prejudging. So he moves up automatic, by definition, he moves up anyway. And he lost to Bonac in the prejudging. And if you watch the RxMuscle prejudging wrap-up, all of us, I think it was Samir, me, you, unfortunately, we had Ramy 3rd, because he looked like he was the biggest guy on stage. But in terms of bells and whistles and detail and like crisp levels of muscularity and, dryness and all those things, it wasn't like he was a distant 3rd. But when they called out him, Phil, and Bonac, I didn't feel bad for him. I just thought that, I think he's going to end up third here.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting that his mental readiness is being called into question.
Let me go to Aaron
because Dave, as Chad pointed out, he has the support system, right, in Kuwait. He doesn't have contrasts of me calling him up, or Dennis James calling him up, or George Farah calling him up, and creating this havoc between people here telling him all the way there what to do. He's got the support system, the team, the energy, the drive, frankly, the love and support of his, of people, say what you want about, Oxygen Gym Camel Crew. They show up and they are behind him, not 10%, not 100%, 1,000%. So just to allude to the idea that he's not mentally ready is surprising. And I've spent a lot of time with Ramy, and Dave, I compare him to Jay Cutler. I think he's no I think he's as strong mentally as Jay. I think he's as humble as Jay. I think he's as smart as Jay. And Jay Cutler's not someone who I would say, oh, he's not mentally ready. Jay was mentally ready when he was losing.
Yeah. Let's before I go to Aaron, I want to play a clip by Chad Nichols, who basically sums up this team effort by Ramy and what it means by Ramy not bringing the best look of his life to this particular show.
Sucked everything out of him, but yet the skin is still holding water.
What causes that?
You end up with those issues because, look, at the end of the day, if you come in with thick skin, you're only going to thin that skin so much coming into the contest. That's stuff that all has to be fixed throughout the year. You can't fix that coming in 3 months. And so I think this is a good Ramy. I don't think it's a great Ramy. I don't think it's going to get anywhere close to Phil or Boanak, but it's a good Ramy. And I think they still have a tremendous amount of work. Here's the trick with this, though. You got to realize, when you look at his situation, nobody's in it. Nobody's in his situation because he's a 300-pound monster. He's got everything handed to him. It's all sitting in front of him. He's got a team with him all the time. Not one other athlete up there other than that group has that, okay? If you look at it based on that, it is a catastrophic loss. The only other people that have that is a married couple. Chris, you know that, right? And when you have those type of situations, when me and my wife were in that type of situation, I knew what she ate. I knew what it did to her body. I knew what it did. So when you look at things based off of that, it's a loss. Is this a good Ramy? I think it's a good Ramy. But I think the potential of what this kid has, what we want to see from this kid is astronomical, and we're not seeing it.
That was Chad Nichols basically saying that this was a huge loss for Ramy because of all the support he had around him. Aaron, would you agree with that statement by Chad?
He moved up. Loss.
Repeat.
Could have won. What's that, dude?
Repeat what you said. I think we missed the beginning of it.
I said, Forrest was not a big loss. He moved up in the places. He got second place.
But wait, Aaron, but did he really move up? Or did Dexter and Roden just get worse from last year?
At the end of the day, does it matter? If you mean in terms of his condition or whatever, I think he's very different. When he was working with Chris, he was certainly much tighter, drier, all those things. This is a much different looking Ramy. If they were all at 100%, you're saying John Roden was at his very best? No, I don't know if he would have beat him at his very best. But with what we saw, I based on the play things. Did he do it worse, or is it a win or a loss based on the end result? And the end result was that he did better. So there's no way, in my opinion, I don't see how you could say that this is a loss for him because he moved up.
But isn't really what we're waiting to see, all of us, because we're all Ramy fans here, and Chris, me, you, we could, no matter how much critique we give him, we're Ramy fans. Aren't we just waiting to see Ramy win the Olympia? So if Ramy doesn't win the Olympia now, it seems like it's a loss. Chris, would you agree with that statement?
Well, it's a loss in this context. You got to put these odd things, because I'll admit I'd take it a little personally, because if I was helping him this year again, right, and he looked like that, whatever that is, just say you brought him in too big and not hard enough. It's a loss.
We're looking at pictures. By the way, we're looking at pictures,
People
Chris.
would want my head. Aaron, would you agree with that?
Chris, we're looking at pictures online. Hold on, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt. We're looking at pictures online. The right picture is from last year's Olympia. The left picture from this year's Olympia. Obviously, Chris prepping him last year. The Camel Crew and Beta prepping him this year. Just so you guys get an opinion. Do you think, again, finish what you were saying, guys, while we're watching these pictures.
No, I had asked Aaron, would you agree with that? I mean, if I was prepping him again and he came in like this, meaning he was by no stretch of the imagination as hard as Bonac or, let's say, Phil, it would be considered a catastrophic loss because of, right?
Not if he plays second. No, if he plays second, then no thing. Now, if next time he places second again, then it's a loss. But at this point, as long as he's moving upward in the rankings, now he's the second best bodybuilder on the planet. I don't think that anybody would have said that last year. Next year, if he's best again, it's a loss. But I don't think so, Chris.
Well, yeah, but Aaron, if he brings this look next year and Dexter and Roding look like they did last year, do you think Ramy's going to really come in second place?
I think it will be very tough. I don't know. I would have to see them together, but I think that if Rodin was at 100%, then I don't know how Ramy would have done with this look. Yeah. You know, it's just kind of even Bonac. Look, I thought Bonac was winning. I wouldn't have been surprised at all if Bonac came in second. Yeah. It wasn't. Bonac had all the details. Bonac was.
Well, by definition, Aaron, if you're putting Phil first, like we all are, or now you're putting Bonac first or second. I mean, and the judges had Bonac second. I guess, how do you measure up the success of, put it this way, after prejudging, if they had posted up results, top three and Ramy in third, you're going by scorecards, how would have that reflected on
so then he would have been
success or not?
He would have been third. He would have. So by how by what the judge said. That's how I'm going. A perfect kid better because we only have that. So I mean, if Rodin put as shredded as he was with you, and he won, but he wasn't.
That's called the night show in Spain, Aaron. That's called the night show in 2016 in Spain. Because we don't those pictures that are posted up of Ramy and albeit flat. Let me just take my hat off to Chad Nichols, because that is the conundrum with Ramy. Is if you backtrack, Ramy had never been in any type of quote contest shape, Olympia level contest shape pre last year. You know what I mean? 15, he was holding a million gallons of water in prejudging. 13, 14, 15, he was the biggest guy on stage, just like he's always is. But he didn't have, Olympian level conditioning. Last year he did, except he was too small and, too flat in prejudging. By the night show, he had that pop and fullness, and he's probably still too flat. By the time he get to Spain the next weekend on the tour, he was that combo of both really detailed and full. And that's the difficulty with his body is, you can say this is a, tremendously impressive physique, and then you put him next to Bonac and next to Phil, and you say, oh shit, he's still not hard enough. How could that possibly be? You know what I mean? And that's the problem for him. That's the unique problem for him, which I'm sure will get solved, right? At some point, it's going to get solved. At some point, he's going to show up a combination of just peeled and crazy and big as a house. Well, but right now, that's elusive. It was elusive this year. He's not peeled in full, and last year he's certainly not peeled in full.
I think, Chris,
do you think it would help him, Chris, if he were to compete more often?
It's a great question. It's a great question, Aaron. You know what I think? Technically, I would say yes, but in reality, no, because this is a guy, and few who can come in and decimate Phil. And last year, my idea was, if he's peeled, he'll still be big and get by Phil. Didn't work. Kind of sort of worked at the night show. I don't know, worked a little bit. He had some type of rebound in Spain, and that was like all the stars lined up. But this year, you can't really criticize the approach because the approach had to be the opposite of mine. Just be peeled, crazy dry, and you'll still be round enough. This year was just be shockingly round, and you'll still be, quote, tight enough. Because I'm sure, had 9 out of 10 bodybuilding fans or 10 out of 10 walked into the hotel room the day of the show, we would say, this is tight enough. You're just too big. I mean, what are they going to be critical of? But then you put him next to Bonac in prejudging, who was at his lifetime best, spot on, shockingly, he was very surprising. And of course, Phil, with literally saran wrap skin, you say as immediately my impression was as prejudging, just like last year was, oh shit, he's really still not big. He should be bigger. Here it was, oh, he should be tighter. So there's somewhere in between, and I think Spain was that look, and maybe and that was just part of it was luck. I mean, like Chad made reference to that. He was just so hard and so lean last year that you could eat donuts and cookies for 3 days, and it doesn't go into subcutaneous fluid and body fat. It just goes into muscle fullness. So by the time you get to
Kuwait.
Spain, everything was popping like crazy and pulling, and you know what I mean. So it was a happy medium in terms of those two looks.
Well, let's move on a little bit. We don't want to make the whole show about Big Ramy, but the fact is that Big Ramy is the most exciting bodybuilder to come along in the last 5 years, and I think everyone is waiting for him to finally win the Olympia because we know it should happen. We just haven't seen the conditioning. And look, let's face it, the judges do judge what's up there, but the judges also judge you against what they know your best is. And that's just human nature. When you look at Ramy, might he be better than a lot of other guys at some shows because he's bigger and he's rounder and he's got better symmetry? Yeah, but we want to see Ramy at his best. And last year was close, like Chris said. If we had played on the theme of last year with a little more fullness in the Olympia, I think that would have been the look. I hate to use the word package. That would have been the look to take out Phil. And I think Phil even knows that. I think they left the door open. And Chad Nichols said it best. They brought him in too big. You said it too, Chris. Ramy's not a legitimate 301-pound bodybuilder on stage. He's a legitimate probably 285, 287, 289 bodybuilder. And when you bring in someone too big, it usually means that they still have some fat on their body. And when they have a little bit of fat, even though it's spread out over that enormous frame, it blurs definition. And you could dehydrate the hell out of people at that weight, and it will not bring in more detail. It might just make them look worse. So this was a good Ramy, as Chad said, and I'll agree. It wasn't a great Ramy. It wasn't the best Ramy that we've seen. If we would have seen the best Ramy, it would have been Ramy walking home with the victory, and it would have been Bader putting the gold medal around my neck instead of the silver medals at the wrap-up video. We talked about Bonac being crazy.
So Dave, it's so going back to the point though, I still don't understand. It's a mental issue. Was the idea that he didn't look good enough to win, or was it like he looked good enough to win but didn't present himself because mentally he's not ready?
I think that Bader was taking the blame off himself. For not maybe bringing him in as lean as he should have, and he was putting the blame onto Ramy, which obviously was not the way it should have been. And I guess that's the point we're pointing out here, and I think that's the point you're trying to make. And we're not trying to take shots at anyone. We're just calling it like it is. Bader blamed his mind, and it wasn't his mind; it was his body that failed him. I think his mind was right where it needed to be for this show. I saw a Ramy on stage that was revved up and high energy. I felt that he really was ready to win this show mentally. Aaron, what's your thoughts?
I didn't see any reason. I didn't see a mental weakness by any means. I mean, that's just not what I saw. And obviously, Phil Commands has a certain stage presence. He's like the stage captain. I mean, you see him walk around, the energy he has, the confidence he has. Ramy certainly didn't have any of that. I mean, he didn't walk around like he was the champ on stage, but he didn't look like he was lacking confidence at any point in time either.
Now, let's cut away from the Olympia for a second, because we wrapped up the whole show on the final wrap-up, which you guys can watch on the RxMuscle YouTube channel or the RxMuscle.com website, and you can look at all our analysis. I like to touch on all the different aspects of the weekend that I found interesting. First, it started with the press conference on Thursday afternoon, And, most of the conference people would say was kind of boring, but there were some moments in there that were pretty cool. One of them was where Dexter Jackson and Heath were going at each other. And we all know that Phil has very thin skin and doesn't like to be criticized. And Dexter was basically insinuating that Phil had ducked the first 2 Olympias by not doing them. And Dexter insinuated that he, was battling it out with the likes of, Ronnie Coleman on stage and all these top dogs at the time. What was your feeling, Chris, about that battle that they were kind of having, that argument they were having? Did you like it? What was your takeaway?
No, it made me uncomfortable. The press conference made me uncomfortable because I feel like it, frankly, it's old. You can't tell me it's not set up at this point right now than to get any one person to shit talk another person. And I think Dexter has a tremendous amount of respect for Phil. And I think that Phil has a tremendous amount of respect for Dexter. They're 2 of the greatest, really. Dexter with a zillion wins. Here's, Heath at that point sitting down there with 6 Olympia wins. And, things bubble up that probably shouldn't, because I don't personally see what the benefit was of that exchange.
They just want drama. They just want drama.
It's useless drama because it got into bitch talk. You know what I mean? It got into Dexter, both like going down into the gutter about nothing,
During that whole exchange, I texted Dave and I said, "Are people interested in this? Because I wonder if I'm just disconnected from the actual fans now. Because I'm watching it and being like, is this really happening? Like, are they just going to let them like argue like this?" And Dave said that it let them have their fun. He said that people liked it. I was like, man, because to me, I lost me. I was like, why are we listening to these 2 guys argue with each other?
What are they arguing about? They're talking about nothingness. And then they're getting into like Ali coming back. Dexter says Ali, is the best because he had losses and came back, which would, I guess, typify. And Mayweather because he never loses. So Heath fashions himself like a Mayweather minus the cash, and Dexter, fashions himself, as Ali, somebody who's won the title, lost the title, ability to come back, and it was
weird.
But it's every year, we go there.
But wasn't that way more entertaining than listening to everyone say, "I'm bringing my best package to the stage and I've worked really hard," and come on, it's so boring already. I would cut right away from those guys.
You know what, Dave? At this point, is there anything new that comes out of the press conference? Is the framework there to deliver anything else but me getting into it with Aaron and me calling names to Aaron and Aaron calling names to me? And, it's almost like we're looking for that one authentic moment of Kai versus Phil. That was authentic. That was real. That was a real moment, and that's why that was a once in a lifetime pent up, frustration with Phil at Kai and Kai at Phil, and that was real drama, and there was some real, if you know the history of the Arnold Classic being scored one way in prejudging and Phil losing at the finals, and just. There was a lot of real drama there, and this was just like, hey, let's try to create another moment, and that's what they like. I don't think it's me personally. I don't like the press conference anymore. I don't think it's good for the sport. I don't think I'm going to learn anything new.
Chris, but the press conference is really for the fans. It's not for us, the press. Yeah. It's really not for anything. Really the fans want to get excited about the show, so that I understand the concept of it. I think it's too long, and I think that they're not. Maybe the questions are not more directed enough. I think that when they ask controversial questions, you get controversial answers. Andre Ferguson was great. Cedric stole the show. By making it, it's funny that Cedric had to stand up and do a moment of silence for the loss to Dallas McCarver. And then he went from this very sentimental moment, and then he basically made fun of everyone, even though he said he wasn't going to. He made fun of Bob Ciccarello's shoes. He made fun of Josh Lenardowicz's head.
He made light. There's a difference between having fun, everyone, calling Dexter an old man and saying that Bob Ciccarello's feet are too big and he's wearing funny long blue shoes versus Dexter and Phil if no one broke it up, God only knows they would be calling. I heard you. God only knows how personal it would have got.
But that was,
And,
don't you think
and
that's entertaining? I find that entertaining.
I don't. I mean, that's just my.
I thought Cedric was by far the best. I mean, I loved Cedric, and I thought it was very respectful what he did for Dallas, and it meant something to me personally that he did that. And then it was good that he lightened up the mood, because that could be really, obviously that's an extremely sad and tragic topic, and he lightened it up by talking about Bob's long shoes, and Dallas certainly would have liked that. He loves Cedric. Dallas loves Cedric. So
speaking of Cedric, I would have to rank him up as the biggest disaster of the weekend, wouldn't you say, Chris? And you worked with him. I kind of worked with him, I guess. You never know what Cedric's going to listen to and not listen to. Was he the biggest disappointment of the weekend because of the fact we had such expectations that he was going to bring?
Yeah, for me it was personally disappointing in so many respects, because somewhere in the prep towards the end, it's like flying a plane in a storm. You lose, once you lose your altitude, you don't really know where you are. And I think maybe like in the last 10 days, oddly enough, his body just started to change, and that's not a reflection on him. It's really a reflection on me, because that was of a coulda woulda show, and just to give that odd perspective to the Olympia. I always say Cedric technically could have won multiple Arnolds. I mean, every single Arnold he's done, he's brought a package that's spectacular. Including when the Dexters are there and the Branches are there at their best. I mean, you could very easily argue that he could have won Arnold's, and like any physique, you can poke holes. You can say, well, he didn't win because of this, or he didn't win because of that. But this was just a bad showing for Cedric, I mean, I had a lot to do with that, because I prepped him for that show. Anyone I prep for a show, I think that I have a lot to do with the final outlook, of what they bring to the stage, and things didn't go well, like, sporadically the last couple of weeks, and even more, as we got there. So it's for me, it was the toughest part of the weekend.
Aaron, let's talk about the 212 Olympia for a minute. Flex Lewis, who's a good friend of yours, trains out there in Boca Raton, lives out there, obviously, was having a tough time after the death of Dallas McCarver a couple weeks ago. We know that. He put his hard hat on, so to speak. I know he had to fly out early because of the hurricane to get out of there. Yeah. So he had a lot of drama. And drama's not good usually for Olympia champions, right before a show. But he brought a look, maybe not his best, but obviously it was certainly good enough to win this show. Talk to me a little bit on a personal side about how tough it was for Flex to kind of stay focused on this Olympia.
Very, very, very tough. I think it would be hard for me to put into words how tough that it was, because obviously as close as I was to Dallas and everything, and everybody here at the office, he trained with Dallas every day, and that was a big part of the prep. Dallas, he helped Dallas get ready for the Arnold, pushing him, and Dallas was, in exchange, since Dallas wasn't doing the Olympia, he was pushing Flex through the process of the Olympia, and he trains at his gym, his private gym, every day, and I think they took it very hard. He went to the funeral for one day. We left. I actually stayed the day to the following day. He actually flew in the morning at 6 a.m, drove 3 hours into the middle of nowhere up there, went to the funeral, spoke at the funeral, gave the eulogy, and then got in the car, drove all the way back to the airport, and got back home at 1 a.m. That was his off day, off of training. And I mean, as you guys know, bodybuilders in stress, it's not something you want. And I can only imagine the amount of stress that he was going through, and cortisol his body was releasing. He wasn't able to eat that day. He was throwing up out of either nervousness of doing the eulogy or the whole experience. And it was very, very, very tough for him. And he soldiered through it, basically. He did what he had to do, and he made it. And he was obviously victorious, and I think extremely convincingly so.
Yeah. Really, the controversy of the 212 division, there's always some kind of controversy in everything, was the Jose Raymond versus Ahmad Ashkenani second, third place battle, which really wasn't a battle because we never saw those two guys stand next to each other. Ashkenani winning the prejudging, Jose winning the evening, Ashkenani narrowly beating Jose in the final tally. Talk to me a little bit about that battle and what I guess you could say what the positives and negatives were for each of the physiques.
Positives for Ashkenani is his upper body is just fabulous in terms of roundness. The negative, of course, is the size and separation of the quads. And then Jose's positive was just, he was probably, next to Phil or Bonac. He was in the most just popping, hard, dense, wacky look on stage. So, and he's not small, that's for sure. You know what I mean? So the surprise is that that wasn't rewarded,
Why do you think it is that the judges didn't put these two guys next to each other? Was it just that they felt they were close enough already, being with on either side of Flex Lewis? It seems like
No, it's Dave. There's no way to justify it because you got to do it this way. You got to backtrack. Bonac beat Ramy in prejudging on the scorecards, right?
Right.
But Bonac and Ramy and Heath exchanged positions in front of the judges so that they could get next to each other.
Right.
Because if Bonac was never next to Ramy, there's no way we would have Bonac second. Because it's only until you got them next to each other that you say, wow, Bonac is really in condition right now, and he's really full. And that's probably why he got second place in the prejudging, because there was a direct comparison next to Ramy. With Ashkenani and with Jose, they were never next to each other, and yet Ashkenani, right, he wins the prejudging, Jose wins the night show. So to create this idea of like you don't need to put them next to each other seems ludicrous.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I would have had Bonac in second place unless he was standing next to Ramy. It's only when you get next to him in prejudging that you say, wow. And in fact, Dave, at the night show, you'll notice Bonac was always on the end. So when people say he faded, people ask me, did Bonac fade or something? I said, I really don't know what he looked like at the night show because I only know he looked like in comparison to standing next to who he was standing next to at the night show. That's it, one person. He was on the end. So I think it's just logical if a scorecard is that close that you'd switch them up and put Ashkenani next to Jose and leave, either you leave Flex out or you take the call of those three and just interchange them to be able to confirm what you're looking at. Because if it's that close, then it's that close. You're splitting hairs and you have to see them next to each other. By definition, if it's close,
right,
you need to see them next to each other. It's like Aaron would tell you looking at, or you would tell me looking at, nutrition labels. You put them right next to each other to see which color you like. Which green or which blue or which purple, you're not sure, you're splitting hairs.
Yeah, I thought that, it's funny because I thought the judging was very spot on for almost every class. That was the only oversight I really saw for the whole Olympia. It came down to they weren't put next to each other in prejudging, and I think that the wrong decision was made because of that at prejudging. At night, obviously, the judges saw that Jose was better, and they gave him better. So, it sucks for Jose that he kind of got overlooked in prejudging, But like I said, when you're judging that many people, one oversight, I guess you could let go. But I know it's very frustrating because I know that Jose really did his homework for this show. Aaron, what do you think about Derek Lunsford and his future?
I wanted to just jump in quick because you said oversight. There was one oversight that I definitely didn't agree with that we didn't get a touch on at the wrap-up or just now is Brandon Curry. I thought Brandon Curry looked tremendous, humongous improvement, and I would have had him higher up. Just wanted to make a point.
Well,
I think Brandon was the most improved bodybuilder on the stage year over year. With Nathan, second in there.
Yeah,
Nathan was second improved, but I had him number one improved last year, so I don't think it counts. I thought Nathan was really improved last year for the Olympia.
Yeah.
Compared to like earlier in the.
Dave, I had to say that because I meant to say it before
Yeah.
and wrap up. I had to. In terms of Derek, I think he's got tremendous potential. At the night show, he seemed to have forgot to oil up and put his tan on altogether. But in terms of his potential, he has tremendous potential.
Getting back to what you said about Brandon Curry, I thought he looked good. I thought Nathan D'Asher was even better. I actually had Nathan D'Asher fifth after prejudging, and I guess the judges just didn't see it that way. Roden actually got better placed than I thought at the prejudging that he deserved. He was way better at night, of course. We don't really talk about that much, only because of the fact that we're really interested at the Olympia. Look, it's about the top 5. It used to be about the top 6. Do you notice they only call it the top 5 now? I think they got too many classes, so it's not top 6 anymore. But they do that. I just also want to thank Mike Sansevero for the amazing job of pictures he did. All these photos that you're watching, you can check out at the RxMuscle.com photo gallery, contest gallery. If you want to check out all the pictures, they're all up there. Johnny's pulling from those. If you look at Nathan here, to me, Nathan was the most improved bodybuilder I thought of the entire show. I thought his placing could have been higher. It was a tough battle in that 5th through 8th spot. I thought everyone could have been swapped out, but I really am impressed. I think that Nathan has got tremendous potential. He's got a very tiny waist. His conditioning is tremendous. He's got good showy body parts. I predict in the next year or two, we're going to see this guy really rise to a level that no one ever anticipated from him. Chris?
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, I think that it's inevitable that he moves up. Brandon will continue to move up. There's no knock on Brandon, but he will move up. But Nathan has the potential to move up more because he's just a wider, taller, bigger guy than Brandon is. You know what I mean? Unless Brandon puts on 30 pounds of muscle and keeps a smaller waist, because I think on Nathan, if he puts on 8 pounds of muscle, 6 pounds, 5 pounds, it's really going to look like he did that on stage because he's got a lot of width. He's got a great V taper. He's just a bigger guy. So I think he's dangerous in any show going forward. Yeah.
David Henry, who finished 4th in that 212 division behind Jose Raymond, was not the David Henry we've seen in the past. He was flat. He was not quite as hard as we've seen him before, and I think that really cost him. I think he had an opportunity to do well here. I don't even know if I would have had him above Derek Lunsford, to be honest with you, but obviously he's a polished, seasoned competitor, and he did at night come back better. So congratulations to him. But a 6th place was Milan Shodik, who we all were very high on, going into this show. Chris, you had mentioned to me a very good point. That Milan has a lot of trouble making weight, and it seems like he wasn't able to fill up properly. Do you have problems with your guys that, I know when you used to help Correa, he had the same problem filling up. Is it a Vegas thing because of the weather, or is it just a time thing?
No, he's not a 212 guy. He's not a 212 guy. I get news for you. Correa's not a 212 guy. Yeah. He's never, you know what I mean? It's just that. The difference between someone like this guy at weighing in at 212, I guarantee if you see him at 224, you'd think Flex won't beat him. Or you'll think it, you might not think that, but you'll say this. He's going to be second to Flex because of his height, the V taper, the detail. And then just by definition, when you try to make that weight, you don't give up water and just everything else stays the same. You end up flattening out, and he was flat. He was definitely flat for the show. Me and Arash Rabar had this conversation after the Olympia as well. He looks unbelievable at 224. He's got to make 210. 14 pounds has to come from somewhere, and you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to go out and eat pasta and rice And that pasta is going to digest right into the muscle I just sucked down to get down to that body weight. So I really do think, people are critical of him trying to go into the open, but I think he's going to end up in a death spiral of frustration if he stays in the 212, because what's going to happen? Every time he'll run up against a full looking David Henry and get waxed.
Yeah.
Even though if you took them both 14 days out and put them side by side, you'd say this guy's going to destroy David Henry. But David Henry's at the weight already where he has to drop down from a already ripped to the bone bigger body weight. So it's going to be a challenge for him, and it's I think he's spinning his wheels trying to stay in the 212s. The flip side of that, of course, is you risk going into the open, then you got to do the Europa shows because, right, Nathan, we just mentioned guys who are big guys who just eat him alive in an open show. So he's got to pick right shows from there.
I'd like to see him try that. I think that's a good strategy on your part. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Classic Physique Showdown, because that was maybe the most exciting division in the show, and then we'll recap all the other winners. Guys, stay tuned. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Heavy Muscle Radio. I'm Dave Palumbo, and I'm talking with Chris, the technician, Aceto, and Aaron Singerman, and we're recapping the Olympia. But before we get back to the Olympia, Aaron's got his son there. What's up, Asher?
Hi.
Hi. He got big. The last time I saw you in person, Asher, you were a little baby, 6 months old, in Holland, Amsterdam.
Yeah. I know.
You remember.
He remembers.
All right, let me show.
Are you mentally prepared, Ashley, to be your father's best buddy?
I am.
He is mentally prepared.
Asher, who should have won the Olympia?
Oh, who should have won the Olympia? Say Kai Green.
Kai Green.
Asher, does your father pose around the house? Does he take his shirt off and flex?
Flex? Which is my favorite pose?
Oh my God! He knows the poses of Aaron. Oh my God! Most muscular.
That's nice. Good job,
Nice, Asher. Nice.
Okay. Let me get back to it.
Go into baseball. Stay away from bodybuilding.
Go play.
All right. Well, before we get back to the Olympia, I want to talk about another tragedy in our bodybuilding world. Argentine champion Alessandra Rubio. She was burned alive in a car crash, her horrific car crash in Argentina. She was a world champion bodybuilder. I mean, it's crazy. We see so many deaths in our sport lately. It's scary. It's like every week there's another one. And I want to send out my condolences to her family, obviously, and all the friends and people around her. What a terrible way to. I mean, we had Sean Harris die a couple weeks ago from a car crash as well, and you never know when your time's up. It's sad, really, and it's scary, but we all send our prayers out to her. So let's get back to the bodybuilding coverage. I want to just talk about the Classic Physique battle between Breon Ansley, who is now the new Classic Physique Olympia champ, and second place finisher Chris Bumstead. Chris, let's go to you first. As you know, I was a huge Bumstead fan, and I really believed that he crushed that lineup and won it. Obviously, I'm also very, I'm a friend of Breon Ansley, and I really love his physique, but I thought Bumstead had this knock it out of the park physique. Talk to me a little bit about this battle and why you think it went Ansley's way.
Well, they went for unlimited conditioning. Breon was the most conditioned guy on stage, and and that's fine. I'm still trying to put my pulse on the class. I think I got it after this year. It's kind of like women's physique, not to water it down and compare it to like when women's physique first came out, but it seems like last year they were looking for like balance, right? And it was inevitable that balance and flow was going to go the next step up to, but you got to be big. And they quickly moved into, you got to be diced and peeled. And I think that what the distinguishing factor for Breon was that he was diced and peeled, especially from behind. And that is what they deemed to be the best look for that class for that day. That's not to say that he doesn't have a classic physique, but I think his physique is like a hybrid of genuine bodybuilding and remember it's called classic. It's genuine bodybuilding and a classic look. Whereas, previous amateur shows, they kind of like really emphasize a classic look, which is odd because it's like an intangible. We can talk about it, but when we see it, we say, "Oh, that's classic." So I think what put him over the top was his level of conditioning head to toe, especially in the glutes, hamstrings, and back. And that's how I saw it. In terms of the way they framed the judging.
Aaron?
I mean, me personally, when I think classic physique, I think in my mind like a picture of Chris. So like, I understand and I agree with what Chris is saying. Obviously, if they're looking for conditioning, if that's extreme conditioning was number one, then it makes sense. But in my mind, this kid has classic physique written all over him. I mean, that's what it is. That's like the vision. So that's kind of my view on it. I would have liked to have seen Chris win. And when I think about the future of that portion of our sport, I can't see him not being a champion at one point.
Yeah, I thought, the vacuum pose, I mean, the small waist, the big structure. Chris Cormier said it was because he has no biceps, and that Breon Ansley won on biceps, and which I thought was pretty funny, because Chris was obviously helping him with his posing. Breon, look, it was definitely a close battle, and you know what? I think you could flip a coin, and I looked at the scorecards, and it wasn't unanimous, which is good. That means that some judges had it Bumstead, some judges had it Ansley, and it just so happened that more judges picked Ansley. So I think it was a tight battle. I think next year they'll battle it out again. The hard thing is that these guys both have such similar physiques, such diametrically opposite physiques, that it's really what you like and what you don't like. So, one person might like this look, one person might like that. I showed my wife, Amanda, the pictures, and she didn't like the vacuum that Bumstead was doing. And I said, well, that's classic. That's the guys from the 70s did, but she didn't like it. So, it's everyone has their own likes and dislikes. And I thought these physiques were so good that it raised up the level of excitement for this division to astronomical proportions. Some people, Chris, have even gone as far as to say that the classic physique should be the new standard for the men's open.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's the new standard, but when it first came out, I did say, we discussed the idea that in 5 years, we're going to see two things in 5 years. Three things. We're going to see insane support from the fans, and we're going to see insane physiques come out of the woodwork. Because when this board short division started, it was pathetic and a joke. It was like guys down in Boca Raton Beach, Aaron, with board shorts on and a little bit of abs, and no one knew. And the judges had no clue how, what we wanted and what to look. And then people started like developing their physique, and then you get now you have Jeremy in first place, and second is who got second in the board choice?
Andre Ferguson.
Dude, these physiques are off the charts.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to see is the progression of people coming out of the woodwork in classic, where we are going to think, can you imagine we thought Chris had a classic looking physique? It's going to be like the physiques that are going to sprout. Mark my words. They're going to look just like the women's, who's got the craziest tapers. What class is that?
Figure.
Bigger.
Figure. The top 3 in figure is just astronomically bizarre to look at in the first call out. The 3 girls who have the greatest taper that anyone would say, oh my goodness, that's just crazy. Those are the type of physiques that we're gonna see within 3 to 4 years in men's classic, and we're gonna be so excited about it that when we get to the men's Olympia, we're gonna say we like it more. You watch.
Aaron, let me ask you this question. Being the social media butterfly that you are there, do you think that more people can wrap their hands around this classic physique division because that's kind of the social media class? People like that ripped abs, small waist. Let's face it, the guys with the most followers on social media have the best abs, the best look, and this classic division kind of encompasses what social media wants to see only on a bodybuilding stage. So it has more mainstream crossover appeal.
So yeah, my opinion with that is that the people don't really identify, the general public don't really identify with the Phil Heaths. Right. So very few people out there, if you were to poll the people on Instagram or just the general guys out there, very few people want to look like Phil Heath. But when you look at Chris Bumstead, there's probably a large portion. Look at Sadiq Kadzovic's following. His following is bigger than almost every single pro bodybuilder out there. And if you look at the people who are following, like Louis Marco, who you mentioned before, who incidentally I have to say is a genius, not an idiot that's in the garage or whatever. But
hold on, I didn't call him an idiot. I said he's a guy in his garage or his basement. I didn't call him an idiot. Okay.
He's not.
Because you say that, and now people are going to say that I'm like a hater. I'm not hating on him. I think what he's doing is great, but I don't think he's a judge. That's all. And I don't think he's a journalist in the sense that he should be critiquing physiques from his basement.
Well, Dave, can I go back once more to the Phil Heath fraudulent issue about the gut?
Yeah.
Why it's a fraudulent issue? Because if it was, his gut was hanging out. Let's say that his gut was hanging out to his toes, which it wasn't. If you were there and prejudge, and was it, Aaron, in any quarter turns, a front double, side chest, side tricep?
I actually did not. I did not notice that it was distracting in any way during that portion of it. I mean, I noticed it was larger than normal, but I would not say that.
Okay, you're a shitty judge, so what do you know? No, but the reality is this. The fraudulent part of that is, if you were honest, to defend what Dave said, if you were honest, you'd put the side chest side by side and say, Phil's getting waxed. You'd put the side tricep side by side and say, Phil's getting waxed. You'd put the back lat spread side by side and say, Phil's getting waxed. You'd put the most muscular side by side and say, Phil's getting waxed. And he wasn't. So you come up with cockamamie ideas of why Phil should be, what, 9th? Right. Or even 2nd?
I think Louis says 16th.
Well, you know why? Because Louis comes from the social media background. Aaron, let's face it. Be honest with me. If I took Chris Bumstead and I put him next to Phil Heath on stage in a picture, who would social media say was Mr. Olympia?
I was going to say who would actually win would be much different. But yes, Chris by far would be, if you put them and say, who would you rather look like?
No, not look like. Who's Mr. Olympia? Bumstead versus Heath. Put it on social media, on Instagram. What is 98% of the people going to say?
The general public is going to say that Chris Bumstead.
Bumstead's Mr. Olympia. And you and I both know that there's no way Bumstead stands next to Heath.
God, I've never defended Phil. I never defended Phil Heath. Phil gut Heath as much in one show as... It'll probably come back and haunt me somehow. Karma.
You know, the greatest line, every Mr. Olympia has always been accused of having a gut. You remember Kenny Jones, the bantamweight guy who turned pro? He's a little insane. Kenny Jones used to call Jay Cutler, Jay Gutler. Gutler. That was his famous line. Every Mr. Olympia has always been made, always with the gut, because you know what? You can't make fun of the best bodybuilder in the world, so they got to pick out some intangible that, like I said, the guy was standing, in a weird position, and like Phil is in that picture that Johnny's had up there. And, now you're going to say the guy's got a big gut. But you know what? It's not the transitions that determine the show. It's the execution of the mandatory poses that get judged. So,
but the answer to your question, though, David, is that social media and the following of these athletes, I think that it won't be long. If it's not already basically happening, I don't think it will be long until the popularity of the classic physique guys surpasses the open bodybuilders.
Give it a time frame. Give it a time frame, Aaron, because I predicted that from day one. From day one.
Within 5 years.
I think you're off by I think, respectfully, I think, you know what? I think we're going to see in 3 years from now that classic Olympia lineup where you're going to get those figure girls physiques, meaning just with the craziest. We're going to get V-tapers out.
Let me ask you guys this question. Will a time ever come, and I'm going to compare it to women's physique. Women's physique started off as figure girls hitting poses. It turned into women's bodybuilding, the new replacement for women's bodybuilding. Will classic physique get to a point where everyone's doing it and the only guys left in the Olympia are the guys with bad shapes and big guts?
I don't think so. I think it'll be around.
Is that a possibility where all the new guys want to go into classic and no one wants to be a bodybuilder anymore? Chris?
I hope not.
It's possible.
I think this.
Could the Olympia people drop the Mr. Olympia like they did the Miss Olympia and just put the classic physique Olympia in there?
Maybe 20 years from now.
It's possible. All right,
it just feels like classic is ready to just explode. Look at what Dave. Not only was the board shorts class a joke. It was a joke. There was guys up there who looked like I got 3 abs and like my 6% or 8% body fat. Now you got the top 3 in the, you got the top 3 in the board shorts with just blasting delts, capped triceps, sliced abs, Christmas tree backs. So, it's evolved. And not only has it evolved, but I mean, we all know we go to shows and the worst thing is, okay, next up, men's physique, class A, 1 through 300. You got 300 competitors. Right. I mean, the growth is ridiculous.
Chris,
speaking on the social media numbers side, those guys like the Ryan Terrys and the top guys have millions and millions of followers now. Even the middle.
Dude, I work with Sergi Constance and last year I worked with Sadiq. Between them, they have Sadiq and Sergi Constance, if you add up their followers, they have more followers than all the people who live in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont.
And they're making big money.
Eric, it's like a state. It's like a whole entire state is following them.
That's scary, of Sergi Constance followers.
And the funny thing is that Sergi Constance didn't even do that well in the show,
He got 12th place.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because he's got the followers.
Constance currently gets paid more than almost everybody in the Open Olympia. So that's something to think about.
Well, I just want to go over, we mentioned earlier Jeremy Buendia winning the Olympia again for the 4th time, beating Andre Ferguson narrowly and Brandon Hendrickson in 3rd. In the women's physique, we saw Juliana Malacarni win her 4th Olympia, and she's not slowing down. She said she'll be back again next year for certain. Jennifer Taylor 2nd, Heather Grace in the 3rd position. In fitness, Oksana Grishina did her last Olympia, winning it with probably one of the best routines I've seen her do. It was a 1-song routine, but it was so emotional. It was basically celebrating the fact that she's going to miss everyone and that this will be her last hurrah, so to speak. I don't know if you guys had a tear in your eye. I had a couple tears in my eyes, actually, watching the routine. In the figure division, we saw the best.
Aaron did not cry. Aaron's sales came in, and they were down a little bit this month.
He was crying.
That would be sad.
He didn't cry, but he was sad.
Yeah. Now, I think the closest battle, aside from the classic physique, was in the women's.
My sales never go down, Chris.
You're creating a negative vibe, Chris, for Aaron's sales. He's getting very nervous.
I didn't want to create karma for you.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. Don't do that, Chris. All right, sorry, Dave.
No, it's okay. In figure, obviously, we saw that.
Aaron can continue the show for the next 8 hours. You have nothing to do. If the sales put up, there's nothing you really have to do today.
That's right. Don't have nothing to worry about. Okay, Dave, go.
All right, I'm going to go back to figure, where I thought I enjoyed the best battle of the entire show. It was the reigning Miss Olympia, Latoya Watts, the Arnold Classic champion, Candice Lewis, and the dark horse, Sydney Gillen, who's always been just right there. And Sydney Gillen, 25 years of age, is now the new figure Olympia champ, unseating two-times champ Latoya Watts and beating Candice Lewis in the process. What a terrific, terrific battle. Chris, I know you're very high on her physique, and what do you like about
everything?
Sydney?
Dave, the first time I saw her, the first time I said, this is the best physique in this class, period. It's a mind-blowing V-taper, and her legs are not too big.
Yeah.
Some of the girls in the class, the legs are too big, and I think I don't know why, but hers have a slender look without looking little. They look trained, and, the top three are all good looking, but this girl could go into the movies.
I thought she was going to tell me when I interviewed her after. I thought she was going to say she had been training for 2 years or something like that, because that seems to be the new thing. These genetic freaks just pop out of the woodwork. She's like, no, I've been training since I'm 14. I said, 14? Both her parents are bodybuilders, and she's been raised going to shows her whole life. So she's
nutty.
from that.
That's nutty.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? She was a track runner too. She was a 110 meter intermediate, 110 hurdler. And
tremendously. The top three are tremendous. The top three are just tremendous, and this is how impressive the three are. You could go there for a bodybuilding show. You could go there for the 212, and if that, you happen to be sitting in the seats and they announce this class and you think you have no interest, those three will make you interested in the class due to their everything: stage presence, shape, flow, muscularity, beauty. It's three unbelievable athletes.
They're so good now. Those three girls are so good that it must be discouraging for girls trying to come up, because there's just because remember, Dave, when it was Candace Keene and Erin and Nicole Wilkins? These girls, all three of them, are so far past that. It's like a whole different thing happened all of a sudden.
Yeah,
well,
I agree.
I told Heather Dees had been out of the scene for a year because she was having some problems and she was letting her body rest up. And I said to her, I said, look, if you place fourth in this lineup, you won as far as I'm concerned.
I totally agree.
And she did.
She looked, yeah.
So she probably was the most improved athlete of the entire figure division for certain. And she beat Nicole Wilkins, who finished in fourth. So, everyone else was vying for fourth place. That was number one as far as I'm concerned, because no one was beating those other three.
No. So I got to nominate. We got to take the poll. We got to nominate Hanny Rambart as Guru of the Weekend over Bader.
You get 2 wins. You're right.
Yeah, he got the 2 wins.
Heath and Buendia.
Yeah.
That was my part of the press conference, Dave. I forgot to say, when he got all worked up, it seemed like he wanted to just beat the shit out of that guy who came up.
Yeah, well, George Brown stood up. He was not. What they did for the press conference, for those who don't know, is they took the top 10 Olympians open. They took the top 5 212, and they took the top 5 of the men's physique division. The men's physique guys are the biggest. They argue more on social media with each other than any other division. And George Brown wasn't in the top 5, let's just say. He was in the audience. He got up and asked a question, and he basically started calling out Jeremy Buendia. Now, Jeremy Buendia might have thinner skin than Phil Heath does. And Jeremy just buried him, which was pretty funny. I thought there was going to be a fist fight between those guys. He was so loud that that Andre Ferguson, who's usually the guy who's talking up a shitload of stuff, actually was quiet because he couldn't believe what he was hearing.
Yeah, I think if Jeremy and him got closer, if Jeremy could have reached him, I think he would have attacked him. I think that you could see that there was real he wanted to do something to him. He was trying to keep himself back from saying anything he would regret. It was very ridiculous. Very ridiculous.
Even Phil Heath was looking to his side. He was like, "Oh my god."
They were laughing. It was funny because Dennis James and Bob Chick, when he came up and asked the question, nobody knew who the other guy was.
No.
George. Nobody knew him. So Dennis was like, "Wait, you're actually competing?" that was the funny part.
Well, it's funny that no one in the press except for us seems to know who anyone is. Do you notice that?
There's too many of them now. You can't remember all of them.
Well, you know, as we report on them constantly, so we kind of take for granted we know who they are. I couldn't tell you who was 15th place at the Nationals in men's physique, but I can certainly tell you who won because, you know, it's gotten to that point where there's so much, you can only know so much in the sport. I have the worst memory of all time, so if I don't interview the person, I don't know who they are usually. So I try to interview all the important people at least, or at least as best I can. Well, guys, I want to thank you for helping me wrap up this Olympia here on this special edition of Heavy Muscle Radio on Monday here. We're doing it on video for the benefit of you guys so you can see the pictures and the videos and all this stuff we're talking about. Aaron, it was great hanging out with you this weekend. Same with you, Chris. And I wish we could do it a lot more often than we do.
Well, are you? Well, let's see. Are you married, Dave?
Yes.
You got kids?
Yes. Now.
Aaron, you married?
Yes. You know the answer.
You got kids?
I got 3.
That hanging out stuff ain't gonna happen.
It's over. It's over. But
Chris, don't you still have some properties down here?
Yes. Yes,
It's a business trip.
Yeah. Aaron, my hurricane insurance ran out.
Oh.
Listen,
Okay.
are we on live? Do you want to?
did Joe Charrier have to come down?
Huh?
Did Joe Charrier have to come down?
No, he was on standby. He didn't have to come. You guys were lucky. Boca was lucky. It's just, you know,
Very lucky.
I mean,
Very lucky.
lucky is not the word, dude. It's insane that things didn't get decimated.
Yeah. We lost power for a few days, and that's it. I can't believe it.
Yeah, you want to hear something really funny? I lost power for 3 days too, and the day before the Olympia, it came back on, but it only came back on my house. The rest of the block was out. So definitely someone up there was watching over me so that I was able to, because I would never have left. I wouldn't have left my family.
Yeah, you wouldn't have left. The universe wanted you to be at Mr.
That's
Olympia.
right, Aaron. You know it. Thanks again, guys. We're at the end of another episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. Remember, until next week with Heavy Muscle Radio,
The truth hurts.
it certainly
Asha
does.
can say it.
Take care, Asha. We'll see you next week.
There's that. Bye, guys.